Hello and welcome. We are the Aussie guys. Matt, a warm welcome. And G and I'll speak for G. He can speak for himself in a second, but we always look forward to our sort of annual touch base. It's an honour. And it's fantastic to read the RSP, which we both I won't say read, not every single page, but it is a fantastic publication, and absolutely, if you are not familiar with it, then where have you been? But
a lot of errors in there, though, in the wide receiver. A lot of errors in the wide receiver. Guys are the wrong numbers. I don't know what Matt's doing this year. I have no idea.
But it's always a highlight of our year, teeing up a time to chat to you. Yes. And being able to, and I know G is always very keen to sort of hone in on the wide receivers, because I mean, in a way, that's the position that we find sort of the easiest to scout.
Yeah, for me it is. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So 57 this year, that's my new record.
57.
Look at that.
Yeah.
How many did you do?
Very nice.
Matt, how many?
65.
Oh, he beat you. Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, that's all right. I thought he may have tripped over the RSP that he printed out there.
Yeah, there's a few bits of paper here, Matt. I've got them divided into categories this year, like the guys that your top 10, guys that I like sort of. I heard you speaking about like guys that interest you, and we've spoke about these guys every year, and I seem to get them wrong because I'm looking for those 6'3" athletic guys that never turn out my way. The guys that you've got wrong, I've got a pile of that.
This is why I come to this show to get cross-checked. Yes. That's exactly how it goes. Is to find out what I need to work on for next year. I mean, I made over 100 point checklist for you this year in terms of to try and fix things from the previous years. But
if you had gone 101,
I got to go back to the drawing board again.
101 next year at least, Matt. So,
more correctly, we should say the players that NFL GMs have got wrong, Matt. Because listen, when you do, all of us, when we do our analysis and we have a particular idea, I mean, sometimes you get that square peg round hole thing, sure. And wide receivers fail for a variety of reasons. But, if you were to look at when wide receivers have failed simply because of that intangible of effort and attitude and those sorts of things, they're sort of hard to predict. But, oftentimes, and that's why the post-draft RSP actually is eagerly awaited when I sort of get that little notification, because we really appreciate your take on that as well. It's really interesting to see that pre and post, to sort of say, well, these are the guys and they're interesting for these reasons. And now, hang on, this landing spot is terrible, and this fit is a perfect fit. And then obviously all the rankings, and I know you're not necessarily a fan of rankings, but like all of that sort of thing changes.
But I got to ask G now. I mean, wasn't he happy with AJ Brown 2 years ago and Justin Jefferson last year when it came to the post draft?
My word!
Everybody was telling me those were bad landing spots. Those worked out okay.
No, they did. They worked out very well, actually. They did.
Well, I'm one for 50. So
I also find what I miss out a lot, Matt, is that in the past is that because of what AJ was saying is the attitude. Like I found that I like to think that I haven't got it wrong based on what I watched, but more that once they get to the NFL, their attitude or their past seems to hold them back in some way. How do you compensate for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to be able to compensate for that because unless you interview these guys and actually have skill with interviewing them and understand what questions to ask and what's any type of predictor or work these guys out and or interview the people around them, you don't have an idea. So sometimes you understand that you would the scouts go to the school and ask, what's his work ethic like? And they'll tell you everything that you want to hear because they know that if this guy gets drafted highly, they can recruit more guys who got drafted in the first 2 rounds in the NFL. And that's a selling point for them. But then there's other guys who are honest about it, or you can ask around and do things like, somebody told me the other day, Rick Saratella of the NFL Draft Bible, I had him on my show, and he said, listen, you can ask around and say things like, like last summer, I asked all the BYU people who would, and this year as well, who would you like to take with you to the NFL? Who would you like on your team? Anybody you want to name? And every BYU player gave an answer, and none of them answered their quarterback, Zach Wilson.
Okay.
So, which is an interesting thing when you consider that if you ask, 15, 20, 25 people and not one of them named the quarterback, who might supposedly the most important player on the team, and the second player taken on the board, that's interesting. So it's those types of things that it's hard to account for. But what I try to do on the field, at least, is see if there's a consistency of effort and consistency of improvement in some area, because if they're working at their craft and you're seeing development over the course of 2-3 years, then you can have some level of confidence that they're going to work at the game and they know how to work at the game. But if they're leaning solely on their athletic ability and they fail when they face defenders who actually have some sophistication to their game and look like they project well to the NFL, or have athletic skills in the NFL that demand a level of technique and conceptual knowledge that they don't have, and they don't develop it during their college career or aren't even moving in the right direction, those are folks you worry about a little bit, because you realize that they might just think that I'm athletic enough. God's given me these wonderful talents. Devonta Parker, when I remember him being asked, how was he and what did he expect, or what was, how's his game the way it is? And he said, God-given talent. Didn't talk about work, didn't talk about anything else. And it took him a little while. He figured it out, but it got
5 years.
People pretty impatient.
Was it 5 seasons? He worked it out?
I think so. I mean,
something like that.
He suffered the equivalent of the plagues in the Old Testament for maybe the for the beginning parts of the season. I think maybe then he saw the burning bush and decided that maybe it was time to see the light, I guess, and do some things.
Without a doubt.
I feel like as compared to all the other skill positions, wide receiver, because like running back, you've only got X number of like available spots. Wide receiver, you've got a lot of opportunity in the NFL. We're seeing a lot of guys who are kind of getting to the twilight of their careers, and a lot of depth charts that are open. And the last few wide receiver crops that have come through have been really good. And I feel like my impression, although both of you guys have got much more, authority to say yay or nay on this, but I feel like my impression...
Don't put me in Matt's category.
My impression is that this class is quite deep, and I feel that from an opportunity standpoint, if we're sort of thinking about fantasy primarily, from an opportunity standpoint, there's actually going to be quite a lot of opportunity. Whereas if you're talking about the backs, then, some of them will find, sort of plum landing spots, and then it kind of like the opportunity kind of dries up, and many of them might not make the 53. But wide receiver, you feel like, well, there's lots of opportunity, and with a deep class, it sort of feels like there's going to be lots of chances for guys.
Yeah, I don't know how G feels about this, and I'm curious to see what he thinks, but I would bet that he's looking at it, probably half of the players on this that he evaluated, he probably feels like they have a shot to at least contribute in the league. I mean, that's kind of how I feel, is that I have about 28 to 29 players that I looked at that I felt like there may be one or two things away from at least contributing, maybe not starting, but that's a lot. And it's one of those things that when you look at it from that perspective, it's because there's also really good players at the top, and then there's these intriguing slot players that could kind of go either way because where they land, how they're used, that kind of thing. I feel like that this is one of the richest classes, maybe not at the top where you would, I think there's good players at the top for sure who could compete with some of the best players from the past 2 years. But I think just overall from a volume of players who are available, it's the richest class we've seen in quite a while. And after I finished the RSP, I told my wife, if I get arrested it's because I saw a wide receiver somewhere in public, like at the grocery store, and I just walked over and punched him out. Because this is always the hardest chapter to do. And by the time it was over, if I saw somebody who looked like a wide receiver, I'd probably have jumped them. Yeah.
You end up with one of these though, Matt. If you don't do it properly, you end up with the cask on your hand.
See, there you go.
I'm glad that you and AJ brought that up. Is that with the depth of the class, like how many, like you've got 10, is it 10 or how many? Is it 10 or 11 in your first tier, Matt? 12. Is it 12 in?
It might be. It's pretty
but how
close.
How many really good guys are in? You know, like
hard-hitting question. How many really good guys?
No, but startup NFL players are there. Like we talk about depth.
Starter quality.
And depth means different things to different people. But I mean, starter quality wide receivers that you looked at.
Yeah, for me, let me look at this and see what I have tiered up because I was looking at something a little bit different here. But in terms of tier 1 guys, all right, so I have 4 players in the first tier. But to me, that tier is guys who should start right away or have the ability to start right away.
Right.
Then I have, and really actually 6 players I have at that. Then I have tier 2 players. These are guys that could contribute right away, probably as the 3rd or 4th wide receiver. And I have a lot of guys there. I mean, probably about 16 players.
Oof.
Now, I don't think all 16 of them are going to do that because draft capital dictates a lot too and fit. But these are guys that I think you'll see. There's probably 22 players who I would think should see some amount of playing time that you're thinking, wow, in a year or two, they should be competing for an opportunity. And then I like to joke around about my unscientific attrition factor. So if you divide that by 4, you're probably looking at 5 players who are going to be qualifying for all of that. But that's, injury, knuckleheadedness, whatever, don't know how to work, don't understand that they can't rely on their talent alone, that kind of thing. But, 22 overall, that's not bad.
So how many guys, like I found this year, Matt, more so than any other year that we've been talking, that there's not one, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. There's like, I found like 1A, 1B, 3A, 3B, like guys that are so close that you just don't want to divide them. They're the same entity. They might play at different positions, but you just think, mate, that I can't put this guy here and then put this guy behind him because I don't think he is behind him. So for me, there's been a lot of like 1As and A's and B's.
Welcome to my recent world in terms of how that's been for me for the past 5 to 7 years. This year felt that way too, but except for the top guy. The top guy was
without a doubt
fairly. Actually, the top 2, I felt like there was a fair bit of separation between those 2.
Well, that's why I said 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
They were the first. I watched Jamar Chase and I watched Jalen Waddle, and I had my piece of paper who sits on top, so I just put them alongside each other.
There you go. I like it, but I had one over the other for sure. But to be honest with you, before the end of my period of doing this, Jalen Waddle was my number 1 player for months.
Yep.
Until I watched a little bit more Chase and saw enough of some things that I had unanswered questions about that led me to put him a good tier above. Really, I mean, like I could have made if my tiers were different in terms of the scoring of the grade, Jamar Chase might have been like, I don't know, he could have been 1, and then Jalen Waddle would begin the 2nd tier. And then and then the 3rd tier would have been, so if we're going to be really honest, maybe the first 2 tiers really are the first 6 players, and there's 5 in the 2nd tier and 1 in the 1st tier, and that would be your number.
Yeah. Well, look, I said you've made a lot of mistakes, but I'll give you the first the first 4, mate. I don't know how we do this, but every year I have you on, we have the top 2 or 3 at least in exactly the same order. And you've done it again this year. You've done the 4. I've got Devonta Smith at 4, but I have Elijah Moore at 5.
Okay.
It's a bit different from the guys, a couple of guys above him. because he's going to end up playing a different role for a team. But, mate, you were doing great until you hit number 5, and then it was all just...
I know.
Downhill after that, mate.
That separation of less than a point between 5 and 8,
well,
it's just...
That's all it
so
takes.
Different.
Yeah, that's
so different.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to work on that.
So look, when we talk, like we don't talk about the top guys because everybody that has you on a podcast talks about Chase, Smith, Waddle. Bateman's getting a lot more.
He is
chatter now. And he's going to get even more now that you've gone and done this. But I really like when we talk about like guys that are like, we probably should talk about the top guys first, shouldn't we? And then go into the guys that sort of there's always guys that intrigue me every year. And they're the guys that I enjoy watching the most because you have no idea where they're going to go, who's going to pick them up, what round, what's going to happen. But you see these things in them that just go, oh man, just give this dude a shot. Just give him a shot. And if it all comes together, and look, one guy that's like that is, and you have him at number 28, and that's TJ Vasher. Vashers?
Yeah, TJ Vasher.
Mate, he's going to be a guy that I go and pick. And there's always one every year that just absolutely burns me that I really like. And I feel he's one of a handful of guys that are going to be in that category this year because he's just, to watch, is just spectacular.
TJ Vasher is... we'll look at it two ways. I agree with you that it's very possible that he could be that guy. Okay. My sympathetic side is the guy looks like he's built like a praying mantis, and he has unbelievable skill to be able to win the ball in the air. He has a great long catch radius. He has decent speed. You see some potential with his hands in terms of being able to use them to work off press coverage. So I like that about him. I love that about him, actually. But then the experienced person in me who's been through several iterations of TJ Vasher like wide receivers that I liked more than I should have. Justin Hunter as a good example. Is that when I watch TJ Vasher, there's still a lot of unproven things about his game in terms of route running, in terms of making reads of the field. And, there's some things in terms of his ability to, run great routes against press man coverage. You see him in a spread system, and the exposure of important things that he's going to have to do in the NFL, I didn't see a lot of. I didn't see a lot of evidence that he could do a lot of those things. And they're important things that he's going to have to prove. Now, so the stuff like catching the ball, absolutely. One of the best in this class.
And he goes after everything, doesn't he, Matt? Like there's guys in this class, I'm going, mate, why didn't you like dive for that ball? You just sort of, if you had have like given it a chance, you give yourself a chance to catch it, but you didn't even give yourself that opportunity. Mate, this guy won't let it, mate, even if it's outside his wingspan, his radius, he will throw himself at anything that's within fingertip catchable.
Yeah, he does. And there's only one other player who was as impressive, if not more impressive, as a pass catcher in this class in terms of the things that you just mentioned. And it's that type of thing that the problem with that is that it's the primary thing you expect when you think wide receiver is catch the ball. So the better they catch it, the more spectacular catches they make, the more inclined you're to think, well, if they're athletic enough, why wouldn't you rate this guy high? But there's a certain level of depth where you have to place importance on other skills. Like how does he get in the position to be able to make the catch? And is he running good routes? Is he getting in the places he's supposed to be? Is he has experience with different types of coverages? And, for me right now, when I look at his game, I mean, there's some things like the release footwork I like, but I want to see him, but I haven't seen him in those situations where he's going to have to, where he could prove that he could do this against NFL level players. He wasn't put in those positions enough.
Yeah.
So yes, like ranking wise, he's going to be low, but in terms of the write up, I'm with you because it's more like there's a lot of promise there with him. In terms of the upside is great, but the problem is if he can't get in a position for a quarterback to say, I'm going to let this ball go and throw it and let him take the chance for it, then it doesn't matter how well he catches the ball. So let's hope that he can prove that he can run the routes and get open and be able to get releases off of press coverage.
Yeah, look, that's one of the things. Separations against bigger, stronger corners was what I wrote down with about 3 question marks at the end of it, because you sort of watch it and I don't know how you do it, Matt, but I look at the guys he's playing against and say, okay, an NFL player is at least 50% better than the guy he's playing against right now, who probably won't make it to an NFL squad.
Yeah. I mean, some of that can be there. Some of it can be that. Some of it to me is he executing the techniques in the way that is going to maximize the athletic ability that he has. And if he's not executing those well just yet, then I can look. It doesn't matter what athlete's in front of right now. Though you can then take the athlete part and say, well, if the cornerback is 50% better, what he just did wasn't even good enough for the one that he was in front of. So he's got to work on that. But yeah, to me, that's the big part of it is the route running and the separation. And, if he does that well enough, I mean, still, to me, where I would, as we're having fun with each other talking about, where I got it wrong, I would say where my buddy G got it wrong is that instead of looking at the ranking, he could look at the actual talent score.
I looked down
because
that.
he scored, because the actual score he scored as a contributor with starter execution in the limited role, and he's like on the borderline of actually being in that next tier, which is here's a guy that you put him in the slot, you put him singled up against man coverage playing maybe off man or just a single coverage man playing tight, and he's alone on one side of the field. He's going to win some passes. In the way that he plays, as long as he's the type of guy that works at his craft. And that's kind of the unknown too. But I'm kind of surprised no one's really been talking about him either.
There's a couple of guys like that. And we won't talk all about them straight off because we'll leave a couple from a bit later. But look, your top 10, you have Jamar Chase, Waddle, Bateman, Devontae Smith, Kadarius Toney, is it? Tylan Wallace, Terrace Marshall is someone I want to speak about, Matt. Elijah Moore at 8, Frank Darby at 9, and Amari Rogers at 10. Terrace Marshall. I watched him, Matt, and I honestly didn't see what everybody's talking about, and now people are talking about him even more. I thought that when he wasn't involved, you knew he wasn't involved. And I don't like that. Like I want a wide receiver to sell it, even if the ball's not coming to his side of the field. And then what I found when I was watching that when his quarterback had to scramble, he hadn't done anything, so he wasn't helping out his quarterback because, mate, this ball's not planned to come to me. You just keep working because you never know what happens. Things break down. And I just found him standing there like by himself thinking, well, shit, I haven't got myself in any position now to help out my quarterback. Look, the dude's physical. He's big. He had that one game, 11 catches, 235 yards and 3 DDs. But if you look at the game and look at the defense, it was really poor. So how do you see Terrace Marshall? Because you have him at number 7.
Yeah, well, I mean, how much did you watch him this year only, or did you watch him last year as well?
I think, I must admit, Matt, it's mainly this year, to be honest.
Yeah. Last year with Joe Burrow,
and he had his good
and
year.
Those other 2 receivers, there were times that he was the best player on the field.
But once he doesn't have a Joe Burrow, once he doesn't have a really good quarterback.
Yeah, he does. He did, and really, he didn't really have a good team around him this year. But at the same time, certainly one can criticize a young player for his effort or lack of thereof it, and it's a valid point. I think at the same time, for me, I kind of expect players to have a little bit of that, or to pick their spots where they're going to, maybe kind of tone down the intensity a little bit on certain plays. But from what I saw a player who was tough.
Yes.
In terms of early in the game, if he had someone playing physical against him and he maybe made a mistake, he was able to make up for it and not get rattled. He was able to play consistently for the rest of the game and produce. For me, I saw that he identified things that he needed to see in terms of openings and the types of routes he should run pre-snap. And he knew who he needed to work against in zone coverage. And because he could play inside and outside, that makes him versatile, especially for the NFL early on. So he gives you, multiple options there. I see some nice work with his breaks. He's technically sound in that department. What
about his hands, Matt? Like we're both of us are really big on hand positioning. Like he had, it's probably not a technique. It is a technique problem, but I saw him have a fair few drops where he was already moved away from catching the ball before the ball was there. Like he was already thinking beyond that, and you could see on a couple of balls, the ball's almost there, and he's turned his head before the ball's in his hands.
He gets impatient, and it's more of it's a focus issue.
Yep.
And the focus issues to me are the least serious issue. To me, if the hands are correct, if he can maintain concentration and take contact, I'm okay with that. But if he can't, if he can't get his hands in the right spot, or he shies away from trying to catch the ball when it's contested, that's more of an issue to me, where you're just like excited because you can't wait to get downfield and you rush your process. Lots of guys have done that, ranging from Brandon Marshall to Terrell Owens to Jerry Rice early on in their careers, and they tend to be able to fix that. It's probably the most fixable issue. So for me, it's something I noted, but I also like the fact that, as a bigger guy, as a taller player, he is tough in the middle. He is someone that gets open man-to-man or zone. And then he also, it's kind of a dual-edged sword. He gets certainly he loses focus when he tries to get downfield early, but I like the fact that he will, what you say, catch and pierce downhill, meaning that as soon as you catch the ball, you don't try and stop and assess what's going on and make a move. You just get downhill as fast as possible. A lot of young receivers don't do that well. He does that very well. The problem is that maybe he does that a little too well sometimes, as you noted, and is very much true. But overall, I think that this is someone who may not be as good as Justin Jefferson or as good as Jamar Chase, but even as the third best LSU wide receiver out of the four that are, that have been out in the past 2 years, I think that he's going to be better than a lot of receiver prospects in this class.
And he comped him AJ Green, and I put a few question marks next to that one, Matt.
Well, you got to understand this is a stylistic thing, but, not necessarily talent for talent, but kind of, you look at the build, you look at the style of how he plays. You can play inside and outside. No one's going to be AJ Green, but he certainly is. He's a guy that if the Miami Dolphins wide receiver, who I joked was the AJ Green starter kit, this guy's at least the intermediate level for kids, in the upper range of primary school and up. They can start using glue with this rather than just snappable parts. So, he's a little bit more of an advanced player, even though he's not quite at AJ Green. And I do remember, I have to ask you, you are basically in the legal profession, correct?
Me? No, I'm not. I'm not.
No,
No.
No.
Okay.
Neither of us. Yep.
You talk to too many people, Matt.
I do. Okay, because I feel like I'm on a stand right now.
No. Mate, we're just warming up here. We're just warming up.
Okay, good.
These are the easy questions. These are the easy ones.
Right. Well, let me get my interrogation light going. Swing that back over at me like that.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
And not to continue the conversation about Terrace Marshall, but I have heard people compare him to Randy Moss, and it kind of feels a bit lazy as well. The whole LSU thing, it feels like people are sort of pumping him up for those sorts of connections, you know.
Well, yeah, I think AJ Green's a little bit easier to compare to as an upper range player because you're looking more at the style of route running and the size, speed, and the quickness. But Randy Moss, it's kind of like comparing Rondale Moore to Steve Smith.
Right.
I just don't think you should go there.
Mm.
But it's that's a beyond level type of player that even though, he showed that kind of skill even when he was at Marshall. I just don't think that I don't think he's that good of a route runner. I think he has that good of a skill in terms of winning the ball in contested situations. So that's way outside his neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Okay, Rashad Bateman is one that you probably got him. Well, actually, you and I don't put anything out there because who wants to listen to some dude from Australia and what he thinks? And I did see a tweet this week from some guy. I should bring up his name, but I can't. Saying, all these people out there that think they know, how to judge talent, and he's talking about outside the guys like yourself, Matt. I'm thinking, well, and then I look at his header, it's got analytics, and I go, well, there you go. But film people, but mate, that's I don't understand why people do that. So there's 50 people out there having their two bot, but mate, that's whole part of having getting involved and doing it and having your say and. So
I got started that way.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of people who were like, before analytics was analytics and it was just actual analysis, just using, numbers and, the things people do.
Yeah.
When I would start presenting material, people would be like, well, did you ever play professional? Were you ever a scout?
Yeah.
And certainly they're valid questions.
Yeah,
for sure.
of course they
but
are.
At the same time, now I've been doing it 16 years and I do it full time now because people buy my work and keep coming back to it. So even if I get half of them wrong like this year, it's it's one of those things that it doesn't bother me anymore because it's kind of one of those deals where everybody has to go through that. That's the barrier to entry, is to have people who just sit there. And it's like going to it's like if you were a singer and you went to there are certain clubs in America where they boo you off the stage if you're not killing it right away. You have to pay your dues, and I think that this is part of the dues paying. Sometimes is that you're going to have people who go off on you in that regard, when you say analytics, sometimes, especially media analytics, sometimes that kind of just totally null and voids any type of worthwhile thing that they had to say.
You speak to an accountant, Matt, with when it comes to numbers, and they can make the same numbers say whatever story you wanted to say, good or bad.
Like economists, actually, as my brother would say, who's a statistician and a researcher, and all the analytics people I know who are in the NFL and say to me that there's a lot of media stuff that's kind of snake oil salesman, carnival tent kind of stuff, like make sure your daughter's still with you, at the end of the show kind of thing, before they run off. But I mean, it's not all that bad, but still, yes, there's a lot of people very inexperienced with the data who applied as if with absolute certainty, or don't understand when they're actually looking at someone who's actually doing data-based work, even though they watch film. They sometimes don't understand that either.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bateman. I'll put down what I've got, Matt, and you can hopefully we've got exactly the same look at this guy. But like I said, excellent hand position on all balls thrown in different locations within his catch radius. Like balls that were behind him didn't seem to bother him. As long as it was in his catch radius, he was able to, without even losing a step sometimes. Acceleration off the line, and he keeps accelerating. He's quick, but he has what I call torque. Like, it just keeps getting faster the further he moves down the field. Quick feet, stop start on a dime, willing blocker, works the top of his stems, instant change of direction, knows where his feet are all the time on plays. And what I did like about him on some of his catches, Matt, or a lot of them, he gets 2 feet down, not just one.
Right.
Which is great straight into the NFL. Footwork and acceleration, the strengths of leverage to get separation at the line of scrimmage. Hand catcher, even when he doesn't need to. I love that, Matt. Like, he could take a ball on his chest, no problem, but no, he doesn't. Everything's in front of him. Even if it's right against his chest, it's still hands first. Strong hands, contested catcher, lines up on the outside, inside, comfortable with both. Good contact balance, yards after the catch, and he can beat you with angles, which I really like as well. It's not just based all on speed. He's very quick at working out the right angle.
Yeah, I love it, and that's a great evaluation of him. And the thing that I would add is that this was a player who was probably somewhere between 15 to 20 pounds heavier last year, or 2 years ago, but he got COVID last summer, and he lost a lot of weight. And he came in last year and he played in a system that they used him differently. They used him in a lot of fly sweeps and jet sweeps and horizontal stretching type of situations, and didn't throw the ball as often to him in the deep game in the way that they did in 2019. And he was a different looking player in 2019. He had trouble putting the weight back on because he really had difficulty with the illness. He just added the weight back, some of the weight back on. He said he's about halfway there. And he had a fantastic pro day workout that kind of shows where he's heading. He reminds me a lot of a combination of Keenan Allen and Mike Thomas. If in terms of what he can do, because he's very quick, very good after the catch. He can be physical. He's not afraid of working in the middle of the field. What I really like about him is his ability to win off press coverage, work inside, and have the concentration to make the catch with a linebacker or a safety in the pathway of where his break is headed, and be able to avoid those guys or to be able to take the hit. And his after catch ability reminds me a little bit of Cordero Patterson. He's not as good as Cordero Patterson as a runner, but I don't think there are many that are. But he's above average in that respect for an NFL player at the position. So if he can gain the rest of the weight back and play at the size that I think he's capable of, which is about 210, 215 pounds, he could be a dynamic player both in the slot and outside. The one lapse I did see with him as a pass catcher, and it's a small thing, but occasionally when he extends for a ball, he doesn't have his hands up together right away, and he ends up having to clap onto the ball. And as we've talked about with hand clappers, that they fight the ball a little bit. And it doesn't happen a lot, but it happened a few times in games that I saw, and it was always the same situation. So he's just got to work on that one.
The old double clutch.
Yep.
Yeah. So outside in your top 10, Matt, is there someone in there that you, before going into it, you didn't think, mate, I didn't think this guy was going to make my top 10, and after you've done the evaluation, you've gone, damn, he's in my top 10. It just worked out that way, because you must do it, look back at it and go, oh, I didn't think he was going to be there.
Yeah. I would say probably Elijah Moore, Frank Darby, and Amari Rodgers are the three that I was kind of surprised that were there. Because, Tony, I liked Elijah Moore is someone who I heard a lot about, and I liked him as a slot receiver, and his ability to get open in zones. And I wasn't sure about the speed. I thought he had good quickness, but wasn't sure he had deep speed. And while I like his ability to win the ball, you didn't see dynamic Steve Smith plays, even though his coach Lane Kiffin is touting him as the next Steve Smith, because again, it's going to be good for recruiting probably to say that kind of thing and raise his draft stock. But he doesn't make those kind of contested catches in that spectacular of a fashion in terms of physical play. But he's probably the most consistent pass catcher in this class. I mean, I think he's Mr. Automatic catching the ball.
Yep.
And I think that his ability to win in tight spots and get open in those zones will make him a valuable red zone player. I don't see people putting him on the outside like they did Steve Smith. But I could be wrong about that. But I think what surprised me more than anything is that he did show the ability to win in tight situations. And with the speed that he does have, it gives him a little bit more upside and versatility around the field and in certain situations where, you can feature him outside in certain looks, even if he's not going to be that primary go-to player, that primary receiver like a Julio Jones, AJ Green, Steve Smith type.
Yeah, and you had the comp of Jarvis Landry. That's the I'm not very good at comping people, but when I saw Jarvis Landry, that was the person that popped in to my head.
Yeah,
because Jarvis Landry
a little faster.
Yeah. Like Jarvis Landry when he came out, or when he was coming out. The only reason I noticed him is because I was watching Odell Beckham. I'm going, man, who the hell's this other dude running underneath, getting absolutely pummeled and holding on to the football? That's the same comp I had for Elijah Moore. So, and you had the Danny Woodhead, AJ, being the old
nice
Chargers guy.
Yeah, kind of because I feel like the way they used him as a receiver out of the backfield a lot, you can see that because they showcased him that way at Mississippi, a team with some imagination might decide that in the red zone, that's the perfect place to put him so that they could, find matchup advantages by starting him there, then maybe putting him on the wing or putting him in the slot, and they could move him around enough. And he's a sharp enough player to be able to do all of that, even if he's not as nearly the runner that Woodhead was. He isn't. I think he's more of he's a draw play runner like Woodhead, but I don't think he's as creative. But at the same time, he has enough quickness. He knows how to use his pads. He'll get the yards that they give, that the blockers make for him. And I think that it's enough that you can put him there to use him in a variety of ways as a receiver and to create based on what the quarterback sees pre-snap.
Okay, now, guys, we're not just talking about wide receivers as such as where they're going to land up and be actual NFL players. We've also got people listening to this, Matt, well, more so because they want fantasy, and there's going to get to a point in the draft where someone like Rondell Moore is going to be on the board out of Purdue. How did you see him? Because I found him, he's got a good step. He uses his angles more than explosive speed. I think he overdoes it a little bit too much dancing on the line of scrimmage. Like sometimes I think if the rain was coming in, he had an umbrella. He'd be looking like Fred Astaire. He's used in a lot of ways at Purdue, and I sort of thought, oh man, is he going to be one of these guys that like the gadget guy that everybody really likes him as a receiver and they use him, but the gadget guys just never seem to pan out in the NFL, Matt. We've seen a ton of them over the past years and they just don't seem to, produce what you think they're going to produce when you watch them on tape in college because of the way they get used.
And I understand how people can look at him and see and fear that he's a gadget guy. And there's a real possibility that a team may decide to do that and then just limit him in that way. And then it turns out bad. But I think he's a lot more than a gadget guy. And while I would probably disagree with you about about the Gene Kelly dance thing, because when you watch the techniques, they're actually very skilled techniques that he's using. And if you see him in the slot, there, I remember seeing somebody comment on one of my videos because he used something called a double up, which is basically 2 steps in the same direction with the same foot. Yep. And somebody goes, I don't think I've ever seen a receiver do anything like that before. And honestly, that technique and so many other footwork techniques that I've looked at over the years are things that I've learned from wide receiver coaches at the college level. There's a guy by the name of Drew Lieberman who used to coach at Rutgers. And he coached players like Mohamed Sanu, and Leonte Carew and a number of other guys, and has worked with a number of other pro players. And he has this great YouTube channel, and I've had him on my show a couple of times where he talks about each of these techniques. And a lot of the techniques that he's using are things that, a lot of folks just aren't familiar with. And I understand that. I mean, his techniques are very sharp and he's unbelievably sudden with using them. My concern with him more than anything is that there are I haven't seen him in a contested catch situation. Nobody's targeted him that way. And it might be, some people say, well, his quarterback isn't that great, but he had he had a teammate by the name of David Bell, who we're going to be talking about next year a lot, and I can't wait to see what G thinks about him next year.
Okay.
Might want to put him on your list.
Start watching him now, Matt.
Actually, good, because I already added him in a Devi league as my first pick. When I had to pick for a team that I won a championship with this year, and I needed to restock with wide receivers, and he was first off my list. He's a bigger guy who made plenty of contested catches at Purdue. But the thing is, Moore doesn't get targeted like that. And is it because the quarterback's no good? Is it because of his role, or is it because, well, they don't have confidence in him being able to do that? And when I watch him in practices, when I've seen him in games, certainly can win in tight coverage and track the ball for the most part. He's got a few tracking issues with certain types of passes, but it's a small window of them. What you're going to ask him to do is work the middle of the field and work in the flats and let him run after the catch, and he's absolutely dynamic.
That's where
kill
you. That's where he's going to kill you, Matt. If you give him anything after the catch, you're in a world of pain.
That's right. And what he does off in the slot is so sudden and quick. Yep. It's going to be very difficult to jam him because he has, as what you know, is the two-way go. When you're trying to cover somebody in the slot, the receiver has automatically two ways to go because the sideline isn't the helper that it is on the outside. So it gives him the added advantage. The biggest issue I'm kind of afraid of for him, and he's ranked fairly high on my board, it's just injury, because he's only played 7 games in the past couple of years, and he seems to be one of these guys that if he gets hurt and he's playing hurt, it seems to really be bothering him. There's some players where they play hurt and they still play at a high level, and then there are guys they play hurt and it's like they might as well not even be on the field, or they're like they really look like they're 50% of themselves.
Yep.
And he seems to be that guy thus far. We'll see if that continues. If it does, that's going to be a real downer for people who try to get him. But I think the upside for him, while I don't think he's the next Calvin Johnson in a 5'6" body or a 5'7" body, as some people do, or the next Steve Smith, because again, I don't think he's shown or proven that he has the leverage to be able to throw people around the way Smith did, or the ability to win the ball in tight physical coverage the way that happened. He certainly has the strength, the quickness, the speed. The analytics guys are probably gaga over him because he lit up their spreadsheets like the 4th of July. And understandable. And he's exciting. Technically there's a lot to like with him in that regard, though it's kind of funny to me that a short guy can't catch low passes with consistency.
Oh, Matt,
you notice that?
Matt, the biggest thing I found about him is not so much he can't get him, mate, a lot of this and not that.
Yeah.
A ton of cradling the ball where you just, mate, why are your hands like this when it's actually easier to catch the ball that way? Around this sort of area too. It's almost as though he lets the ball get past him too far. Yeah. And he has to catch it behind him instead of it would have been easier catching out in front. I saw that a ton.
And that's the tracking issue a little bit, because the fact that he lets it come a little bit late, that's a good eye for that. And that's an important thing. And if you can't track the ball consistently and now your hands are becoming a part of the problem, it's compounding the issue. Yeah, there's enough questions with him that, you look at him physically and you think this should be one of the top 3 players on the, in the wide receiver board. But then when you look at some of his techniques and some of his conceptual skills, he drops down quite a bit. And then you add the injury to it. And it's like, well, if he falls to me at a good round, I'll take the chance on him, but I don't want him to be my first round pick.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Okay, so any more in the top 10? Do you really want to talk about Chase, Waddle, Smith? You probably talk so much about these 3 guys anyway, man. I'm pretty sure everybody listening has heard you and other people just talk about same people. That's why
I love coming on the show, because you're like, listen, we know he's talked about him at least 5 different sites and acting like they're only going to listen to you. I mean, like, I like the fact that we do all these different ones, and I think my readers do too, because I can put the show on the site and be able to say we're talking about guys that you really want to know about, and not that every Frank, Joe, and Harry and Geraldine is talking about on the NFL Network, Fox Sports, and everywhere else. Yeah.
I want to talk about the guy that he's hanging upside down. He's in a straitjacket. and then they go and light him on fire. That's exciting. That's what I want to watch. You know,
Jalen Camp.
Don't tell me you've. Hold on. Where's my list? AJ, did I give you my list? Is you on my list? I don't know.
You got it. If you don't have Jalen Camp, this is going to be fun.
I bet you I don't have. I can't find my list, Matt. Will you talk about him when I find my list?
Yes.
Let's talk about guys that we find exciting, Matt.
Okay, well, you're going to be excited about this guy because, first of all, he's 6'2", he's 226 pounds. Okay, so right off the bat, I know you kind of dig that because you like the bigger players,
I do
right?
like the big boys.
All right, not only that, but he's 16th on my board, which is pretty high. And when you look at also the times that he had in the pro day, 4.4340, 4.1620 shuttle, which is really quick, 7.023 cone drill, which is near elite in terms of change of direction skill. He leaped 40 inches, and he bench pressed 220 pounds 30 times.
30 times.
30 times.
Damn.
Yeah. Okay. His dad actually lives in the same county as me. His dad is a trainer of football players and a trainer for pros. And Jalen went to Georgia Tech, which I'll forgive him for since I graduated from the University of Georgia and they're rivals. But he went to Georgia Tech where they play the triple option system for a long time. And wide receivers in the triple option are blockers, essentially, or they occasionally get handed the ball, or they get targeted about 3 times a game. So you have this unbelievable physical talent who didn't get targeted much, and then they changed the offense around, and the coach started bringing Jalen Camp to media events as the only player he'd bring, and they go, why'd you bring him? Because he's like, this guy's going to be, you're going to need to get to know him now that we're throwing the ball. And Jalen Camp, you like TJ Vasher.
Yep.
And understandably why, for the catch radius and ability to win the ball and track the ball, Jalen Camp might be better.
Ooh, he's not on my list, Matt.
Go to my Twitter and look, or go to Google and look up Matt Waldman, Jalen Camp, and Twitter.
Yep.
And look under videos, and you're going to see some videos of him tracking the football where the ball arrives with his back to the quarterback and he's looking over one shoulder and the ball starts to drift to the other and he's able to look all the way over and track it and dive for it. Or post it up where he's facing the quarterback on a comeback. The ball's late, so he's waiting there. The defensive back is at his back and he literally is able to make a leaping one-handed catch that was better than what Odell Beckham did. Now, I mean, it's not the way back like this type of thing, but the way that he caught it was as or more impressive in terms of the way that he had to go up and win the ball and still stay in bounds. He has excellent hands, excellent tracking. He's big enough to look like might as well be like Eric Dickerson's like long lost cousin in terms of size.
Yep.
But it's just the questions are, how advanced is he running routes at this point? His breaks are a little awkward. He needs to work on that, but he certainly has the ability to bend and flex the way you need to run the routes right. But he's a guy that, just from a catch standpoint and an athletic standpoint, those are the things that he could do are hard to teach. And the things that he doesn't know how to do are things he can learn.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about what's going to happen with him.
Mate, I should have done 52. If I had done 52, I would have been all over it, Matt.
Can I give you another one? I want to see if you did this guy.
Yeah.
Or are we going to?
Please don't do it to me. Can I just tell you my guy so I know I've done it?
Yeah, sure.
No, you go.
Good.
Go, Matt. Go.
Okay,
go.
I'll do one. But because I'll get this guy out of the way.
Okay.
He's another one that you need to know about, and you probably didn't get to see him because he was a real football player, and then decided that he wanted to play American football and tried out and walked on to University of Central Florida's special teams unit and then developed as a wide receiver. His name's Jacob Harris. And Jacob Harris is a fairly big receiver. I mean, like some people thought he might be a tight end.
No.
And
you don't have him.
He actually, I'm going to have to look up what Jacob Harris did, like what his pro day was, because apparently I haven't even looked, but I was told it was unbelievably impressive. And I didn't need to really really see it because I studied enough of him that he, he showed real development. Like there were moments that he looked like an NFL starter.
Matt, this is my list. Look how many guys are on my list, and those last two not on there, Matt.
See, I'm getting you back for telling me I got half of them wrong. So that's what it is. But let's see. I selected a special subscription offer with the wrong site. But when it comes to, let me see if I can find it here. There it is. This might be good. This might show it a little bit. So Harris.
Boy. Wow. I'm just looking at his pro day at the moment on my phone.
Tell me what you got. What did he have?
So his 40 was 4.44.
Yeah.
3 cone was 6.51.
Wow, yeah.
His vert was 40.5. And he's broad, they haven't said what his broad jump is on this clip, but I'm watching it and it's like, oh my goodness.
So here's the thing about him. When you watched him during his career, he didn't look anything like that athlete.
Wow.
But that's the thing. He was learning how to run routes. He was learning how to release from the line of scrimmage. The only place where he looked like that type of player was when the ball was in the air and he was downfield and making the catch because he was graceful. He made it look effortless. He could win contested catches. He had reliable hands. And then as the season went along, there were isolated plays where you're like, oh, he's not thinking about running this route anymore. He's not thinking about performing this technique. And he looks like an NFL starter. Mm-hmm. Like he looks quick. He looks fast. And it would jump out at you. And then it would submerge again when he had to do something he wasn't comfortable with.
Okay.
But the fact that you're seeing that, I have him rated fairly low. But what I've kind of told people, I believe with my thing on Harris was he's rated low, but at the end of your draft, you better draft this guy.
Right.
You better get him because this is that guy that a team like the Packers will pick up in 3 years. He's going to be, that next starter that nobody had ever heard of. So yeah, Jacob Harris, where do I have him? I have him ranked 39.
Okay.
And this is a guy that, I still think that, maybe in 2 to 3 years, he's going to be a valuable contributor. So those are two guys maybe you didn't hear of, but in terms of his size, what he does with his hands, the fact that he's learning this fast.
In this video, is he like 7'8"?
He is a specimen.
Yeah, he's 6'5", 211 pounds.
I know that because in the brief sort of time I've just been looking, a lot of people have mentioned tight end, but he looks like a tight end.
Yeah, he looks like a tight end because he's 6'5".
Yeah,
but those numbers right there pretty much scream he's going to be playing the split end position probably in the NFL and once he figures out the things that he's supposed to do, it's going to be on for him.
Oh,
I'll give you some names, Matt, because I know these are on my list. Before you give it to me again, I don't.
We're even now.
Oh right. No, you're kicking my ass. These are, you can talk about any of these guys. I just put when I'm watching the tape. They're just guys that they're not going to be the next Calvin Ridley or anything like the top echelon of guys, but they're just guys that I'm intrigued by what happens to them when they get in the NFL because they have traits that can be used if they're used correctly. Yeah. And a couple of these guys actually were quite high on your board, Matt. So I didn't know that before I put a star next to them. I got Jonathan Adams, Donnie Corley, Brandon Smith. We talked about TJ Vasher. Imar Smith Morissette.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce his first name right? Is that Imar or Amir? Amir Smith Morissette?
Amir, I think it is, yeah.
And Josh... I heard you talking about him last week.
Imad Hebe?
Yes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I probably have it wrong too.
No.
But,
if you try to say it how it's spelt, you got no chance at all, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
So any of those guys that you'd like to speak about? So there's
sure.
Jonathan Adams, Donnie Corley, Brandon Smith.
Who's the second guy you said?
The second guy, Jonathan, Donnie Corley.
What school?
Donnie Corley. Was he out of? He wasn't out of. Hold on, I'll have to have a look for him. He's out of Clemson.
Oh, Cornell.
Hold on. Did I get those confused? No.
Yeah, I think you got two names.
I might have done that, Matt. I might have done that.
Cornell Powell.
Yes, Cornell Powell.
Name. Okay, good. Okay, because I was like, I don't know a Donnie Corley. And I was kind of wondering. Okay, but there we go. Corley. Maybe it's just the hand. Were you writing with that casted hand?
I'm lucky it's my left.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so
he's writing.
That's all right. You're better than I am because my wife goes, it's a good thing that there's typewriters now because your writing is like a different language.
Yeah, mine's terrible.
Can you even read that thing? And I'm like, yeah, probably not. I just see the first letter and I know what it means. Yeah, that's all. But yeah, all those guys are fun. Like, all right, so
I put down pedestrian speed off the line, strong contested catcher, understands the use of leverage, average at best blocker. He doesn't actually block like with any intent. But he's got like swim moves to get separation, has sharp change of direction to create that, and also good at using his hands to get separation, fights well. More of a build-up deep speed. He's a chain mover sort of guy. An honest receiver is what I put it at the end.
Yeah, he's very good. He's very good in zone coverage too. He seems to find the creases even in tight areas and seems to have an understanding of what he's supposed to do with that. So to me, he's that player that if everything came together for him and he continues to ascend, maybe you could be looking at the next Hakeem Nicks or Juju Smith-Schuster. But that's pretty ambitious to think that that's going to happen.
Yep.
I would say, he can be a contributor, and that would work out just fine. And I think he's close to his ceiling. That's probably where I would put it. Is that from Jonathan Adams, I think is nowhere close to his ceiling. Because when you watch him, he has an incredible catch radius, really great concentration. He has the speed you're looking for, at least to be able to win with his size to get downfield. And so I like him as a vertical threat. I think that he has the ability to become a timing route runner and become a more complete receiver, but he has to work on that. He has to work on some strategies as well to be able to get open against tight man coverage. He does a good job of drawing interference penalties already in certain situations, but he's going to face more advanced defenders where he's going to have to develop a greater repertoire of moves. Who else did you have on this list?
Ihmir Smith-Marsette. He's one of these guys that just the body's contorting everywhere and all that type. Like I think there's one catch that he makes and he catches the ball and he spins around before he hits the ground, so he lands in a more comfortable position after making a great boundary catch. If he fell that way, he could find himself falling on his shoulder or like landing awkwardly, but he sort of, I'll just twist my body around and I'll just land on my back and everything will be fine. He just seems like one of those guys. He's the guy you sort of light on fire that's hanging upside down with the straight jacket on.
Yeah, he's what's interesting about him is that, athletically it's all there for him.
Yep.
But the thing with him is that he needs to make the most of his suddenness right now.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do that. And so at the line of scrimmage, he should be scaring the bejesus out of defensive backs with pace changes and lightning quick moves with his feet. And it's just not there. He's not doing it right now. He's got to get better at that. Now he's explosive in space when he's got the ball, and he's fantastic in that way. He's kind of like a guy from last year who I rated fairly high for a guy that was probably going to be drafted late, which was Jeff Thomas, who had a cup of coffee with the New England Patriots in camp last year, who had very similar after catch skills, could go up and win the ball.
Yep. And
he was undersized with the ability to do that. So the thing is there's a lot of players in this class who have all of these traits that Ihmir Smith-Marsette has.
But they're just better.
And they're just better right now.
Yeah.
So he could get better, but there's a little bit more ways to go for him.
Brandon Smith,
That's
yes.
Yeah. I like this guy, and the only problem I have with him is that he doesn't have top speed. So he's really what he's trying to become is a possession receiver. But there's something to his game, his ability to win the contested catch. He's a tough blocker. He's a good runner. He understands how to run good routes. I think this is a guy that should make a roster. It's just a matter of how far he can ascend. And I think that if he can become a guy that really prepares well against his opponents and he wins the trust of his quarterback, he could be the kind of player like a Tim Patrick was, last year for the Broncos when Cortland Sutton got hurt and they leaned on him. But he's also, he's kind of in that size range where I could see like the old Keenan McCardle possession threat where he could become a, frequently high, kind of a high volume catch player in the short and intermediate ranges of the field who could occasionally win deep because he does adjust well to the ball and he makes clutch plays in tight coverage against defenders.
Yeah, he does. I've written down that Matt, that he just doesn't have that downfield speed. He sort of still needs to work on his hands too, like just getting them closer together. Like there's enough space to drive a car through sometimes.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer's another guy out of Tennessee, 6'1", 210 pounds. How'd you view him, Matt? I think you had him was he in your top?
He's in my top 13 to 14.
Yeah,
I think I like him. I think he's someone that you could play inside and work up the seams and work in the middle of the field, but you could also isolate him on the outside, much like Cornell Powell. I think he and Cornell Powell are very similar in terms of how they can be used, but I think Palmer's a little better and has a little more upside to him in terms of development. He's a little stronger of a player. I think he's a little faster. He's someone that also has a better feel as a runner. And I also like some of what he does as a route runner too. He may not be as good as Powell is in zone, but I think he's a little better than Powell man to man. And he didn't play with, a great quarterback either. So I think this is a guy that maybe have a little bit more in store for his game. Might be a better NFL player than he was a college player.
Yeah, there's one play that I really particularly liked. He caught a ball down the right sideline, and he actually twisted his foot on an angle so that he'd be in bounds when he caught the ball. Like, it's just stuff like to have that awareness that you're actually catching the ball that's going out of bounds and to come down and not, if you put your foot down in the angle it's meant to be, he would have been out, his toes would have been on the white, but you can actually see him move his foot in the air so he knows that I have to have this running parallel with the white line. Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just shows awareness that I like.
Absolutely, and those details matter. And a lot of people think those are nitpicky details that don't matter all that much. What they don't realize is that's actually very important stuff.
Well, I just think it's your brain being able to cope with a lot more than one thing at one time, which is I just got to catch this ball.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
ready to be a dad then.
He's going to do more than two things, Matt. Let me tell you, you should know.
That's true. That's true.
Can we just talk about one guy quickly? Tutu Atwell. I watched his footage, and everybody's talking about it. Like everybody brings him up in the conversation about wide receiver, because he's got speed. Honestly, Matt, to me, that's the only thing he's got.
With you, I think. I mean. He can run after the catch.
Oh, damn, he's quick.
And he can catch the ball. I mean, I'm not worried about his catching ability to a great extent. But as I've talked about a lot on Twitter, a stiff wind will either blow him over, or if he has his jersey untucked, it might act like a kite and he might fly out of the stadium. He's so light. I don't get how anyone looks at him and says he's even in the conversation for anything outside of the 4th or 5th round. But they've got him as first, second round material. I don't get it.
Mate, when they talk about they'll talk about the top guys that everybody's talking about, and then they'll bring up Tutu Atwell. I'm going, I don't like. He gets the ball and he can only run in a straight line with a little bit of 45 degree. He can't. He's not sharp at cutting. to me, doesn't make anybody miss in the open field.
Listen, we don't have any kids around right here, and I'm not going to get too ribald here when I talk about this, but I have an article that I use to make a point, and it gets people thinking that I've been hacked or something because of the image I use, because it involves Ellen DeGeneres looking at Katy Perry's cleavage in a Hollywood red carpet moment, and I say that speed in the NFL and the way evaluators look at it, or that certain decision makers look at it, it's the cleavage of evaluation. Yep. And it's one of those things where, listen, you can't help but notice it. Certain times women will make sure they wear cleavage so that they will be noticed.
And thank you for doing it.
But at the same time, they would like very much that when you have a conversation with them, that you look them in the eye better than you stare at their breasts. And I think that, this is one of those situations where I feel like in the NFL, the equivalent of that is speed, where, they could care less about the rest of the game. If they see somebody who has blinding speed, they just lose their mind and they get so focused on that one thing that it's to their detriment. And I think that this is one of those examples of that.
I actually wrote down here, with the ball in his hand, he seemed to run more scared.
There you go. I would too if I was 155 pounds and facing the heck. I would do that right now. But I mean, being at 155 and that happening would be another story. But maybe he should untuck the back part of his jersey, because at least it will aid, and make sure
if he's running downhill, it'd be good.
Open. He should be part of the Giants, because where they have that wind tunnel that they used to open up on one side of the field, they could get that nice wind going through there. He might be able to hurdle some players and not even realize that's what he was doing.
So can we talk about Josh? What was his name? Josh?
Yeah, Imador Hebe.
Yeah.
I think. I have a lot of readers who recommended him to me for some reason. Yep. One guy knew his family, and so he knew him and was like, I can't wait to see what you think of this guy. And then one of my editors, when I wrote him, he goes, I'm so glad that you watched him, because I've been watching him for a while. He's one of the most intriguing players in this class, because
you compared him to Des Bryant.
Because he's big and strong, and he's a guy that he's big and strong. He's someone who is very good at the catch point. I mean, he can go up and win the ball. And certainly he broke the record, I think, for vertical leap, or was very close, with his unbelievable vertical leap. It was like 46, 47 inches, something like that.
I think it's like 47, Matt. It's just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he doesn't even need a wind like Tutu Atwell. Shoot, but he's someone that can go up and win it. He's strong. The big knock on with him is that he had a lot of drops in his junior year. And so people were talking about that. But when I watched him, I didn't see issues with drops.
No, neither did I.
That I saw.
I actually got him down. I've got him down as like having a really good, strong set of hands.
Yeah, me too. So it was interesting that seemed to be an issue for him. The biggest issue I have with him is that, routes and separation, things he's got to improve upon.
Yeah, but they all have
more than anything else. Mate, but everybody does.
Exactly right, man. Like people that keep saying, he's going to work on his routes. This is the negative. Mate, they all do.
They all do. He just has more to work on than maybe some of the other guys do. But it doesn't mean that he's someone that you should ignore and just say that he's not good enough. I mean, this is a guy that could very well become a dominant receiver. And boy, can he run after the catch.
Yes.
I mean, when I see him, because he played at Illinois and they have those orange uniforms, I don't know if they had Bugs Bunny on and Warner Brothers cartoons when you were little there, but they used to have that big hairy orange monster, and one of the Bugs Bunny. I don't remember what his name was. I always forget, but he was this big, big old monster who was like just orange hair everywhere. And for some reason, I think of when I see Imador Hebe, I kind of think of that, because he looks like a monster of a player,
He's a guy that we've spoke about before, Matt. What I said, which sounds stupid, that you can look quicker and slower depending on what uniforms you're wearing, which is a really weird thing to say. And there are times when I went back and I looked at him again last night before you came on today, And I looked at him and going, man, sometimes he doesn't look that quick. He looks a bit cumbersome. And then you see him in a totally different outfit and go, damn, that dude's got some speed. It's the most – and I reckon he looked the slowest when he was wearing that all-orange uniform.
Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. Or he looked unbelievably powerful in that moment,
he looks huge.
Yeah, he is huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how a team wouldn't take him in the 4th or 5th round. And he'll probably be available in this draft in the 5th or 6th. And people will be like, wow, this is going to be fun to see how he performs. I would certainly take the chance on him there without a doubt. This is a guy who'd probably be a major sleeper in a lot of other draft classes if we didn't have as many of these players, this depth that we talked about at the beginning of the show.
And mate, if you look at their offense, I wrote down here, Matt, come from a passing offense that hardly put up a 200-yard game in the passing offense. So what do you expect people like receivers to do when your offense is not even putting up 200 yards in passing?
Exactly. And you'd like to see him in situations where maybe where he's actually getting enough targets and displaying some of the other types of things he can do other than just jump balls or run after the catch type of targets.
Yep. Someone else I got a star next to, Matt. I think this has been the last one that I've got a star next to, and that's Austin Watkins out of UAB.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins' cousin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Austin Watkins is, I think he's well put together. Obviously, he's someone who wins at the catch point. He has the build-up speed to deliver in the vertical game. And with the help of play action, he can be a guy that probably can get somewhere between 25 to 35 yards down the field. I don't think he's maximized his physical upside. I don't think he's played to the level of strength that he has. He's going to have to work on his releases so that he can leverage that power and explosion that's in his game.
Yep.
And if he does that, I think he could be a contributor, maybe the 4th or 5th guy. And if he shows that he can get faster, maybe he could be the 3rd or 2nd receiver in a lineup. But
I'll just say what I put down here. Goal. As soon as the ball is secured, he's already making moves to avoid tacklers or looking for the best exit strategy. Quick acceleration off the line, quick feet at the point of catch. He's a one-step acceleration guy. Excellent functional strength. Hard to bring down. Had poor QB play. Grasped the concept of using leverage, speed to take top off the defense. Has tracking ability at speed, which is quite unusual, Matt, because I found in this class that a lot of the guys, if they had to change shoulder to track the ball, they couldn't.
Yeah.
If it was coming over one shoulder, no problems. But as soon as they had to look for the ball, a lot of them struggled. Found themselves in a bad position to catch the ball. Overran it or whatnot. His footwork is enough to confuse corners on his intended direction. He's got a really good change up of pace and create separation with his burst. So that's what you were saying, Matt. He needs to work on other ways to get separation besides just using speed.
Yeah, and he certainly has some footwork. I've seen a number of different things like quick 3 foot release footwork or widening with his stems. He uses the stick move a lot. He has a hip shift that he can use, which is really good as an alternative to the stick. And there's not a lot of wasted movement in terms of his back foot, when he's at the line of scrimmage. But he does have some inconsistencies with wasted movement out of his release. And so he's going to have to become a little bit more kind of tighten that up so that defenders can't see that he's telegraphing what he's doing when they play tight coverage. But overall, I mean, he was a guy that I felt like that you saw flashes of him play with a level of intensity and explosiveness, especially as a blocker, where if somebody got under his skin and like tried to bully him, and then he would respond, and suddenly you'd see the extra amount of intensity in his game would show up, and you'd think that's the monster you kind of want to bring out of him more often. Like you'd want him to be able to do that on a regular basis, and it just wasn't there. It was kind of like someone had to goad that out of him. Yep. And if he could leave, if that if he can find that extra gear in his game and he starts applying it to everything that he does, there's a little Juju Smith-Schuster that could be in this guy's game. Juju Smith-Schuster played with that level of intensity all the time. Watkins has that kind of physicality when you bring it out of him.
Yeah, and look, the guys that I put stars next to, Matt, they're just guys that have traits that I'm interested to see what they can develop as they move into the NFL. Or someone can bring out, more of that. One more guy, Matt, before we let you go, because I know it's getting late there for you, obviously. Okay. One more. Frank Darby out of Arizona State. Now, I've written down here he lacks sudden stopping power. He's a physical receiver, strong at the catch point, really good at selling the route with his head and shoulder fakes, strong against close check-in, ability to track the ball at speed. His average catch in college was 21.6. He has speed, but he's not a burner. Wins with his physicality. The one thing I did notice, if you go and have a look at the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, is when he got against a guy that seemed to have a little bit more strength, he did struggle to get the separation. You look at some guys he goes up against, man, he just tortures them. Seriously, he just fakes them, works the strength against them. There's a couple of times he pushes off that he might not get away with, but I was a bit concerned about when he had bigger, stronger, and which he's going to face every week. He sort of just struggled to get that separation, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think too that can happen in practice. So
yep,
I look at that. I mean, I had the same things, faster than you think.
Yep,
he's physical with and without the ball. He's a good route runner in terms of his technique and intensity. He reminds me a lot of Chris Godwin in terms of style. He's not as good as Godwin, obviously, at this point, but you can see how he could become a starter who could work a couple of different positions. He's not as versatile as far as for in the slot, but he's someone that he's tough to bring to the ground. He can win the contested catch. I think he'll be a quick study as a route runner. Just give him a couple of seasons, and I think at that point he could be a viable contributor for sure. But when I looked at specifically, his releases, I noticed that part of the problem is that his stance is maybe a foot wider than it should be.
Okay.
And so as a result, he's not in as balanced of a stance that he should be in, and that extra effort that he has to make to get off the line, he's not as explosive off the line as he should be in terms of timing, because he's not coming off as balanced as he should.
And they can those things, Matt, you say you get to the NFL and they'll work on them and fix it up. And yeah, that will happen because they'll see that. But mate, when you've been doing that your whole life, and I know from watching my son play tennis, is that when he serves, his back foot is so far behind his front foot when he serves that he literally has to drag it on the way up of the throw. He has to drag his foot like 2 feet, which is and his coach has been working on him for 5 years, Matt, and he's still, because he's so worried about everything else that's going around, it's muscle memory has got to the point where he can't change it anymore. Yeah.
And that's one of those things too. It's like, I don't know how much he works on it. But if he has a coach, obviously a fair bit. Matt
says one thing he says about his serve all the time: get your feet closer together, and he'll do it for like 3 times, Matt, and then muscle memory will take, and his force it's back to. And I think it's got to the point now where we'll just work on everything else. We won't worry about the foot.
Yeah,
but it does make a difference.
Types of skills like that.
Yep.
That certainly can be harder to learn than others. But footwork for football players is a little bit easier usually.
Yep.
Because, so much of what, I don't know enough about tennis to be able to say whether the footwork or what you do with, the upper body is, what's easier or harder to do. But I know for football that footwork tends to be a little bit easier to learn. And there's also that environment of where, a player like Darby knows that when a coach says, listen, you got to get this together, you're not going to be part of the football team, you might not be in the NFL.
Yep.
They're going to work on it extra.
Yeah. I just worry about the muscle memory. It's the same with guys that catch a certain way Matt, like we spoke about with, who was it out of Purdue?
More.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Like you see it happen. It's not like a once or twice. It happens because for him, it's just become, this is where I catch the ball now.
And and you strike me also as the kind of parent that you're not like, look, you can't come home if you don't do this.
Oh, mate, you have no. I'm bad, Matt. I'm bad. I'm banned from his tennis.
See, there you go. So at that point, see the fact that mom had the good sense to get you banned from the tennis in the first place. We know right now that the kid has a normal life and doesn't have to worry about whether he's going to be able to eat dinner when he comes home if he doesn't have his serve right. So so I think we're okay. We're much better off on your front, whereas where Darby might be thinking, well, what am I going to be doing for a living if I don't get this
exactly.
fixed?
Yeah,
so.
Right. Okay, last question, Matt. We'll let you go. Fantasy football. Who you take? We'll give you who you take in the first. A wide receiver in the first that you want. Second, how many rounds? There's usually 4 rounds, and then your deep guy. So give me one receiver in each round that you'd be looking at in a rookie draft. Sorry.
All right. Well, yeah. Early rounds, obviously Chase.
Yep.
He's the first priority. Back of the first round, I would probably be considering back of the first or early second Rashad Bateman, depending on where he goes. Yep. I might just decide to reach a little bit for him because I like him. Tylan Wallace, I would probably reach for him a little bit, possibly, though I think he'll probably go in the second round. He'll probably be an easy second round pick, maybe late second round. So I'll say Tylan Wallace somewhere in the second round, especially if I have a mid to late second round pick. Third round, I would probably, at that point, guys who might fall, Darby might fall, Amari Rodgers might still be there. Jalen Darden is a slot receiver. If he falls, he might be a fun player to consider if he lands in the right spot. Fourth round, I'd probably be looking at somebody like, probably maybe a guy like Dwayne Eskridge. If I could get Dwayne Eskridge, I'd enjoy him in the third or fourth round, or maybe someone like Nico Collins, or I might reach a little bit for Jalen Camp if he goes off the board early. But if he doesn't, then Jalen Camp in that fifth round, along with guys like Josh Imatorbhebhe or maybe even Vasher, though I have a feeling, as much as I know you like Vasher, I have a feeling that he might be an undrafted free agent. And if he is, you can get him maybe,
I just like him because he's on fire hanging upside down, Matt.
Hey, I'm with you. I mean, those are fun. He's like the David Blaine of wide receivers. There we go.
And that's someone we didn't speak about. You brought up Tylan Wallace. That's someone, like we could, when we get together, Matt, I just like picking your brain. And the worst part about this, I say every year, is that you screw up my rookie drafts because we talk about these guys. Then everybody that I play against knows exactly who I like.
There's a guy. Let me help you out, because there's a guy that you guys know about that this will completely screw up your drafts. There's this guy out of New Mexico by the name of Bob Harris. His nickname is Football Diehard.
Yeah. You speak to him all the time,
Matt. He's a wide receiver prospect that you guys should really, be paying attention to. He has he plays with a level of intensity. Hold on,
Matt.
Meanness.
Turn this off. Turn it off. Stop the transmission. This is stuff that we should be talking about that everybody knows now. You blew it.
But no, Bob says hello, actually. So, because I was on his show earlier this evening.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, he's great. Yeah,
champion.
It's great.
He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, you talk. It's good. Yeah, Tylan Wallace. How did we not bring up him? I'm just looking at what I've written down about him, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle could be the ultimate weapon. So,
yeah,
we could talk about a few more guys if you want.
Let's talk about Tylan Wallace. I've written down here. He doesn't mind the physical aspect of the game. He's forced a bit too often to the sideline. A twitched-up athlete with quick feet, well-balanced through the point of contact. Change the direction with his foot plan and he's gone. So it's like just one step, boom, change direction and acceleration out of that one step. He doesn't need another step to accelerate. Great set of hands, ability to climb the ladder for a guy his size. What is he, 5'11", 193? I don't know if that's just off. I don't know if that's his actual size. Sets up routes well at the top of his stem. easily get separation. My concerns were about his startup speed off the line. He doesn't have breakaway speed. Can be jammed at the line of scrimmage, so he's got to work on all the same things you say about a lot of guys, isn't it, Matt? The same things off the line of scrimmage, getting separation at the start.
I would argue this: if you saw him this year, then you miss the fact that that earlier in his career, he was probably one of the 3 fastest wide receivers in this draft class. Because he tore his ACL and he was playing with a brace and tore it, and he was still coming back with that and trying to get a feel for it. He ran a 4.38 40, I believe, at his pro day. But the thing that you might admire about him the most is you talked about the intensity, the willing to go up. The physical play doesn't bother him. He gets downfield in a hurry, all that. He's a blocker who will work across the field to deliver the hit that he needs to deliver. But here's the thing. While recovering from that ACL tear, the second to last game of the season for him before he would start his workouts for the draft, he got hit in the knee that he had the ACL tear to and injured it. Now, he didn't injure the ACL, but he injured that knee. Now, a lot of players would probably think, there's a bowl game, but I'm about to go pro and I need to be healthy for my workouts. I'm not going to play. I'm going to withdraw. You see that a lot. He played. He played with that injured knee, and he went and worked out and put on a terrific workout.
Do you know who that game was against, Matt? I watched him against Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. Were the 3 that I try and do 3. It was really hard this year, Matt. I don't know how you found it, Matt, but you probably have a lot more sites that you're able to go to that you know about. Yeah. But it was hard this year to find a lot of footage, at least 3 games on a lot of guys.
Yeah. I have some access that I can't explain why I got it, but I have some access to pretty much everything that these guys have. But I don't remember exactly the game, what the bowl game was, because I don't really follow the order of the college season that much. But yeah, I saw him against UCLA in this past year. I tracked UCLA, USC of this year, and then I watched him in 2019 against Oregon, Oklahoma State, USC, and UCLA, and I watched some 2018 tape as well of him. But if he regains the speed that he had, you're talking about probably one of the 4 to 5 fastest receivers in this class.
Okay, so this is all like when I watch these guys, I must admit, with having the job and and whatnot, I don't have all the time to go back and find out everything about them. So
the only time you get to watch is when you get kicked out of tennis practice.
Yeah, exactly. I might drop him off and go.
This was a good plan, though, for you. I realize now you can watch wide receiver talent because this now we can't have your wife watch this. This part of the tape because if she does, then she'll be on.
No fear. She won't.
There's no chance. No chance.
You're good.
We're all good. We're all good.
Maybe you get another one and start, and then they have lessons, and then you can go. We can start doing running back shows as well.
Oh, there we go. Running backs are probably we're not too bad with the running backs because we play rugby here, but the wide receivers is the position that I enjoy. Maybe it's not the quarterback, which is the All-American position, but it is a glory position, the wide receivers, Matt.
No, I understand. It's great, and I enjoyed getting a chance to chop it up with you guys when we do this. Do you have anybody else you want to talk about?
Oh, geez, Matt. I've got. Geez, we've covered except for the top guys, and we don't want to talk about those guys. I'm trying to think who else we can talk about. AJ, have you seen anybody?
Let me run a couple past you and see if there's anybody that you watched that I'm curious about. I want to know if you watched Seth Williams out of Auburn.
Okay, hold on. Where's my list? Where's my list, AJ? Come on, dude. You're meant to be helping me out here.
This filing system you've got here is
it's not good.
A bit dubious.
Seth Williams.
Give me a pile. I'll have a look.
Yeah, just have a look, AJ.
Okay. Who else? I can name a few, and then that way, if one just pops up that you happen to see, then I can do that. I'll name Seth Williams.
Just there's a list, mate. There's a list with all the names just running down the page. Yeah. So
I'll find.
Yes, Seth Williams. There they are.
Let's see, Dwayne Eskridge.
Yes, I've got him. Yes, Seth Williams.
And Des Fitzpatrick. Those are 3 guys. And Nico Collins. Those are some guys that are interesting.
Nico Collins I've looked at. You kill. Oh man,
it's not in this pile. Let me find
no, there's Fitzpatrick. There's 3 you've killed me with, Matt. Damn it, Nico Collins. We can talk about Nico Collins.
Okay, good.
There's Dwayne Eskridge.
There's Dwayne Eskridge. Yeah, I got Dwayne Eskridge in my hand.
Okay,
now,
good.
I got my producer working now. Matt.
I want to know. There we go. I want to know what did you think of Dwayne?
Mate, the first thing I wrote down is the dude has some nitro underneath that bonnet.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a quick footwork off the line with quick acceleration, ability to speed and keep the foot flat to the pedal. I found he's too easily brought to ground.
Yeah.
His blocking is more of an inconvenience to the defenders than anything else. What else have I written? I put down the level of competition too, Matt. You can only play against who you're playing against. Safe hands, tucks away the ball really quickly, which is a good thing. His acceleration and then back to zero, stop start is really impressive. Return usage, so he can be used in the return game, which a couple of these guys that we mentioned, Matt, that we liked were, I'm trying to think, one of them was like 2000, was it? I don't know if it was Marset, was like 2018 return player of the year in college football. Might have been him. If you can scheme him into space, he's dancing on the paint seconds later. I said pro corners would be able to contain him might be able to contain him just to slow up that initial speed. Would need to be coached up to beat press coverage. Very twitched up athlete who can make you pay for for opening your hips too early. So
yeah, I like a lot of what you had to say with that, and I agree with a lot of it in terms of the twitchy athletic ability, the ability to secure the ball quickly, what he can do in the open field. There's some things that may be because the difference in the type of tape we got to watch, because I got to see a lot of more reps as a blocker.
Okay.
This guy is a little punk.
Yep.
And I say that in a nice way. Like he used to play cornerback. He was a two-way player at Western Michigan. So he played cornerback and wide receiver. And as such, he understands as a blocker how to knock away a defender's reach for him and get his hands inside the body. And he can play with a lot of intensity. And he actually relishes blocking. Like the more you get to see of him, the more you see him, running guys out of bounds, really he's running them into the official, getting under their skin in a way where he will literally wait until the echo of the whistle to release. And usually it's with a shove or some sort of punch or something that's not dirty, but it's this close to being dirty. And then
that's all you need, Matt. That's all you need. You got to walk that line, mate.
Let me tell you something. You'll love him because he does this in the first quarter of the game or in the first half until he gets the defender so riled up that the defender now wants to fight him on every play.
Yep.
And then when that happens, he stops being the punk, but he'll just extend the block just long enough that you think he's going to pull a cheap maneuver, and then he just lets go, and then the defender is angry and takes it out on him and gets called for penalties. Happens he plays mind games with defenders really well. And then he starts playing, and then those guys get out of control. And by the fourth quarter, he's playing with good technique, and he's literally running these guys off the field or, really playing well. Now he has some issues with drops. And the other thing is, as well as he protects the ball, I've seen multiple fumbles in games where the ball gets pulled out of his hands. And I'm a little worried about that because does he have a small grip? Does he have small hands? Is it something where he's just not, even when he's using good technique, he loses the ball a little bit?
Yep.
But there's something about that guy that I think he's going to be one of those guys that teammates are going to love to play with and opponents are going to absolutely hate.
There's actually one wide receiver, and I wish I had to put it aside. One of these top guys that I looked at, Matt, and one thing that I noticed about him more than anything, I'll find it while we'll talk about somebody else, is that once he's got the ball, he has no idea, has no awareness of who's around him. To me, if you're a wide receiver, you got to have that third eye. You got to be real, like a basketball player, very aware of who's around them. I don't know who it was, but he has seriously, the way he carried the ball, he has no idea that, mate, it's not just the people in front of you have to be worried about. But I'll find that while you're talking. But Nico Collins, Matt, I wrote down here, hand catcher, climbs the ladder, shows flexible body control while going up for the ball, ability to adjust during the action of catching, covers the ground in a quick time. Route tree is limited, but a lot of them are, Matt, and they all get coached up. We spoke about that. Ability to come back to the quarterback, use his size to get between the ball and the cornerback, which is really, you don't see it a lot. There's a few guys that do it well, and Nico Collins does it very well. He puts himself between the defender and the football.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I think that when you look at him, he reminds me a lot of Brian Edwards of the Raiders.
Nice.
And I like Brian Edwards.
You didn't like him?
No, I did.
We do.
I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So he's a guy that they have a lot in common when you take a look at the strength, the ability to play the ball in the air, and to some degree their route tree. I think that what distinguishes these two guys is probably how explosive they are. And I think Collins showed more explosiveness in his pro day than maybe some people realized. But I think that he's a guy that has no worse than starter tier speed and short area explosion.
I think the natural hand catcher too, Matt, which I like. It's not something I have to work on. I don't even think about it. It's just
he tracks it like a pro.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. And I think that he's quick enough to make people miss. I think he's a guy that Michigan just didn't do a good job getting the most out of him because they haven't been able to get good quarterback play. So he's a guy that I think could very well end up on a team where he's not DK Metcalf, but he certainly can be used in a role that's similar to Metcalf and be somewhat productive in it, and then maybe develop into a more complete route runner than what Metcalf is, which will help him then generate starter level production, even if it's never Metcalf's level of production on a small route tree.
Yeah, I also like for a guy, 6'4", 215, he really gets down to that seated position, doesn't he? He really bends at the hips and gets down. What else? I also wrote down another concern for someone who I just mentioned, his size is brought down a little bit too easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
It's a concern. Like some of these, you see some smaller guys just run through people, and some of these bigger guys are just, I've done what I need to do, and okay, that's it.
Yeah, if they can wrap him high, he's going to carry them. But if he gets wrapped low, that's a little bit of a difficulty for him. But in tight traffic, he's a guy. He's going to drop his pads. He's going to get good lean. He'll get some yards after contact. But no, he's not a dynamic open field player.
AJ, Des Fitzpatrick, he's in there. He's in there. You brought him back.
Found him.
Yeah, he's in here. I did have him. Someone else people have talked about is Ben Skowanak. Is that how you pronounce his last? Now, I just wrote next to him, just go be a tight end.
Yeah, I've got,
in this wide receiving class, Matt, it's just like, dude, and the tight end class is poor. Just go be a tight end.
He's 58th on my board out of 65.
Yeah.
So, I think if he can address the fact that his change of direction is awkward, if he can fix that somehow, then he might be able to become a more fluid route runner, and then the rest of his game could take off. But that's a big issue. So it's not likely to happen.
Yeah, I just watched him. I thought, mate, you're a big guy. You move pretty quickly. Now, if you're a tight end, you'd be moving bloody well. Just put on an extra 15 pounds and get up to what is he? I think he's about around 220, 225 or something like that, man. I think. Yeah. Just get up to 235, dude. You're 6'3".
He's not even going to be able to block, though. If he can't,
that's the problem, isn't it, Matt?
He's not going to be able to bend as a blocker either.
Yeah. You probably. If he was smart and you look like, okay, these are the guys in the country that are wide receiver, and these guys are pretty good, I'm probably not going to make it. Maybe I'll spend the next couple of years learning how to block.
Well, Notre Dame has a good sales program in their business school, so maybe he can, maybe he studied business, and maybe he'll have a nice career in insurance sales or something like that.
So let's who else we got down here, Matt? What about that other one? Equanimeous St. Brown's brother.
Oh yeah,
Amon-Ra.
Well, other than that, the fact that it seems like his father is like the new age Marv Marinovich. I don't think he's that bad in terms of what Marv did. But certainly there's a lot of interesting rules and things that they made that family do. Like, and his mom, I think they only speak to them in German. When they're in the house, and like, the eating habits and all of the the hardcore stuff, which might make them very successful in life. It depends, as long as it wasn't like something where they're going to rebel as soon as they get out on their own. But Amon-Ra St. Brown reminds me of like maybe a slightly higher end version of Sterling Shepard, which to me is kind of like the equator version of like, it's kind of the dividing line between guys who will start in the league and guys who have the ability possibly to start but need work to do or won't start at all. He's that dividing line of that. And he's a good route runner.
Better than his brother?
Win the ball. Way better.
I thought when I was watching, I thought you're better than your brother.
Yeah, he's definitely better than his brother. I didn't understand Equanimeous St. Brown. That was one where I was like, I remember Mike Mayock loved him, and I was thinking, I just don't see that one. That one's a little weird to me. And everybody had him in their top 5, and I think I had him outside my top 20 that year. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong, but he was definitely a lot lower. Equanimeous St. Brown can bend. He can run the routes in zone and in man-to-man coverage. He doesn't have great speed, but it's better than average, I would say. Yep. And so it's enough that he can get downfield, win the ball. He can run a little bit after the catch. He's tough. But to me, it's like he does everything pretty well, but nothing spectacularly. And you want something that can be kind of an edge for you, a mismatch ability in some area, and he doesn't really have that. So it's kind of like, you can play him in the slot probably, and he'd be good. You can play him in flanker, he'd probably be pretty good. But is he someone that that is going to really be anything more than like your second or third read in an offense on a regular basis? And I think the answer is no.
All right, there's 2 guys we haven't spoken about in your top 10, Matt. Kadarius Toney. That's right, Tony.
Yep.
Out of Florida. He's getting a bit of buzz.
He is. He's like Golden Tate. Think about the fact that, with Golden Tate, put him in the middle of the field, let him run out of the slot, get him into space. Very good runner when he was with Detroit, 90 to 100 catches, 1,100, 1,200 yards for a few years at least. He can deliver that. He can play a little bit outside because he has the speed. He tracks the ball better than Tony, than Golden Tate did. He uses his hands better. But he kind of runs outside his frame a little too much. His legs get a little too wide outside his frame, so he slips in routes. He slips when he's trying to make changes of direction, and I'm afraid that he might get himself hurt landing awkwardly at one point or the other because of the fact that his legs get too wide from his frame when he's running. He's got to fix that a little bit. That's the biggest issue I have with him.
Yeah, I wrote down here that his quick area is dynamic in the short area. Like, damn, but he gets run like he's not a deep speed. Like you look at that speed in close and you go, man, that guy's got some serious speed, but like on a long run, mate, it's not there. He's got a certain amount of speed and a certain amount of area, and then that's it.
Yeah, which is okay in the middle of the field because against safeties and linebackers, and with that contact balance all day. But asking him to play outside, he's going to need help with the play action game to be able to get deep on guys.
And I watched 3 games. I didn't see him drop the ball once.
Yeah, he tracks it well.
Yeah. And the only it's unusual you said about like he's going to get injured because of his wide running stance. I actually said that when he gets tackled, he does something unusual that he drops his head like he's trying to duck underneath a punch like a boxer with no idea how to keep his eyes on his opponent. Like when you're taught to box, you duck it, but you keep your eyes on your. You don't look down at the floor.
You're dropping your weight in order to dive.
Yeah. He drops and he looks down at the ground.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, dude, you're going to get yourself hurt.
Exactly. And from rugby, I mean, if you don't hit with your head up, with your pads up, and uppercut through, or at least have your head up, the minute you get hit, you go to the ground. Yeah. And you don't want to land on your head either, and you don't want to hit your head into somebody when you're.
Well, we saw the unfortunate, when from the Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker.
Yeah, Shazier.
Yes, if you look, mate, that perfect example of not keeping your head up and looking down, and and unfortunately,
Tevin Coleman has that problem at times, where he wouldn't do that. A guy who really does do a good job of working his head up and through is Trey Sermon, the running back out of Oklahoma. He's very good at that.
Okay,
of kind of uppercutting through.
Okay, last one. We've got to make the last guy that's on the top 10, Matt, Amari Rodgers out of Clemson.
Yeah, he's a guy that, it's interesting. He's not as dynamic as these other slot receivers in terms of maybe running ability, maybe in his speed or his quickness or his change of direction. But he can run. He's fast enough to win outside. He can win contested plays. He's a smart runner. He's an efficient runner. He has enough power to be able to at least, push a pile or to be able to drag defenders a bit. You can use him in space and he's going to get yards for you. He's not as exciting as the other players, but I think he's more consistent as a pass catcher, as a route runner, and more versatile inside and outside. Yeah,
I've written down here that he's one of these guys that sort of becomes like a running back once he's caught the ball. Good change of direction. I wrote down here, he shows intelligence. He knows where to be in the opposition's defense. He knows where the soft spots are. Like it's almost like he knows the plays that are being called by the D, and he knows where to go straight away. It's not like he finds himself there and go, oh shit, I've found myself in this position, and I'll turn around and look at the quarterback now. Like he already knows where he's going.
Yeah.
I think his best work's done after the catch.
You could see him being like on a team with Houston if Deshaun Watson actually plays this year, and with what he's going through. But if he's still in Houston and still starting on opening day, you could see he would fit in that type of a system pretty well.
And the only other thing I said is maybe his contested catching, Matt, in the pros will get found out a bit more.
Maybe. I liked what I saw from him in that department. So we'll see. I mean, it's, let me see. Let me look at what I tracked with him, because I wonder how much I actually saw with Amari Rodgers. Where are we here? There we go.
So I did.
That's one of the features of the RSP this year. I've kind of showing some of the tracking. Right now I have him with contested catches versus contact. Yeah, might be found out a little bit more. You're right, because I have him at 60% of the general targets, like versus contact. He was at 60%. Now pinpoint, he was at 100%.
Okay.
So if the ball's on the money and he's got a defender draped on him, he's going to catch it. But if he has to win the ball outside of his frame and make an adjustment in order to win it, then he's at 60%, which isn't bad, but it's not like among the best.
That's it, Matt. We can't do any more. And mate, if we talk about any more, we're talking about guys that we might not even see. They'll turn up on rosters possibly, and they're going to be. Do we want to talk about guys at number 4 on a fantasy on an NFL team, and that way you're not even putting them in your fantasy lineup? I don't think.
There you go.
Anybody else? I think we've covered a fair few, Matt.
I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job.
You've done a very good job.
My word.
There's some other guys we probably could talk about, but I think most of them are fairly, in the top 20, 25 who, but it's nothing that I think the guys you brought up were great. And I think that they're different than what I've had to talk about during this week. So it was refreshing in that sense.
Oh, well, that's great, Matt, that you say that.
That's good.
Yeah, because I know that you always bring it no matter who you're talking to, but I don't know, Mark. It'd be like,
how many times can I talk about the same guy?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I listen to you a lot,
and I try to help that out, but I know with you guys, I know it's good because you're gonna you've got your notes and we can, you've got your notes and you've been looking at these guys and it's fun to hear you see what you're talking about and the way that you phrase stuff and the way that you see things. And then I got to go back and look through my notes while you're talking and go, okay, what did I see again with this guy?
It's like, mate, who talks about colours of football jerseys making someone look quicker? What's this?
You know, but I like that, you know, and it's thoughtful.
I think it's a true fact.
Thoughtful.
I actually think it's a real thing. I honestly think it's a real thing.
You know that the University of Iowa used to paint its locker room for the opposing team pink because they believed that it would sap the energy of the team.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that psychologically a pink room kind of like saps the energy, makes you tired or you get lethargic on some level. And so they would paint the opposing locker room pink every year. That was what it was. So I'm not, I'm with you. I think there can be something to that. And there's certainly something to how players look in terms of in their pads and what number they wear. Some guys in a number, you look at them, you look at him, you're like, wow, that guy must weigh about 220.
Yep.
And then you find out he's like 205, and then there's another guy who wears a single digit number and you're like, this guy's 195 and he turns out to be like 212, and it's just, that's why those events are important pre-draft to just kind of get a feel for, or they wear big pads so they look like they're bigger guys and they play physically. Jamar Chase was a good example of that. 201, the way he plays, you wouldn't have been surprised if he was 215.
No.
And then you see he's 201 and you're thinking, you got to do a double take with that.
That's the same about Josh. We just call him Josh I because I can't pronounce his last. He's the same. Like I said in the Orange, I looked at him and go, man, this dude's like, he's a tight end size. Like
he's
he must
250, right?
Yeah,
you thought he was 250?
I was putting him at he must weigh 235. 235. And then I look at him and goes, okay. And then you see him in another uniform and go, geez, that dude's lost some size. What happened to him? It's just the glow of the orange made him look bigger. So
you thought he was Junior behind you. Looks like Junior's on the blind side of you anyway.
That's right. Exactly. All right, mate. Are you going to get any sleep now?
Oh yeah, I might relax a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I might. I might wait another hour before I go to sleep.
Okay.
But, other than that, it'll be good. I'll chill out for a little bit.
So, what's coming up in the near future for Matt Waldman now?
Well, we've got a post draft that I've got to write when the draft comes, and then I'm doing full dynasty rankings and projections, which I'm selling at my site. Of course, I'll be still writing the football guys and writing the regular columns and doing the podcasts there. I've got a couple of podcasts with Mark Schofield this week where we're going to look at probably Zach Wilson and Davis Mills. Though I'm kind of thinking maybe we should look at Mac Jones because I think he and I both forgot about that we didn't watch Mac Jones together, and we've been waiting to do something like that. So we'll be doing RSP film rooms with those two guys. And then I think I have another 20 podcasts that I'm going to be doing off and on with different folks that I've got lined up, and that's been cool. It's been a lot of fun to get to do this, and it's a privilege to do it because, this is how I this is my livelihood, and getting a chance to have the exposure to share what I think about these players is great. And I just like coming on here with you guys anyway.
Thanks,
and and because I work late nights a lot during the time of year it is, when you were like, when I brought up, I was like, well, what would 4 o'clock be or 2 a.m. be for you guys? And you were like, well, it'd be 2 a.m. for you. And I'm like, actually, that'd be perfect for me because, I usually I'm still like going to bed at 4 or 5 in the morning right now. And
wow,
my schedule will get flipped. And get a little bit
if I was doing it at 2 a.m., I'd be going, things aren't good at home. I said, is everything all right?
But that's because, but my kids are grown, and so it's good. And my wife, she's working, and we figure that out, and I just get this part flipped, and it's okay. But and plus, you didn't get to hear the drill or the hammering or anything.
No,
type of thing going on like that.
Yeah, a bit disappointing. We play a game afterwards, like pick that tool.
Well, next year, that might be done by then. But maybe this time next year, maybe next time next year, she might be working on a bathroom or something like that. That's like adjacent to where my office is.
Yep,
you'll be hearing the tile saw or something. So
right.
Oh
wow,
perfect.
Well, Matt, it's
sorry, no Tim Tams either, Matt. You don't want any more Tim Tams. You're pretty good on the
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go back to being a good boy and take care of myself at this point. But I do appreciate it. They're tempting, though.
No, there is something you should look at, and I did see like a light fixture. Have you seen the light fixture that's the Raven, or it's like your symbol? Is it
is it really?
Yes. I'll send it through to you. I thought, mate, how do we get one of those for Matt for coming on? And it just holds the chord of a light, like a globe.
Oh, okay.
And it looks exactly like your photo on your
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yes. Send me what that looks like.
All right.
I'll see. I'd love to check that out.
No worries. All right. Well, AJ, you can.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for your time, Matt. You're very generous with your time, and we do obviously we enjoy. And I'm just going to give a plug for your podcast, your RSP Film Room, which is fantastic. If you want to get a bit of a closer sort of insight to the process and the way you sort of think and like to sort of break down plays, etc., the Film Room is a wonderful thing, and I highly recommend it. And we're hearing you on lots of pods at the moment, which is great as well. As I said, in the Audible and all the other places that you have your content. But we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for everything you do. And MattWaldmanRSP.com. That's where you get the golden ticket.
There you go. Hey, listen, thank you guys very much. And I look forward to us doing this again. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
And kind of odd for us to be doing it at this time of the day.
I think I look at another 3 guys now.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. I thought I did well.
And bring on the draft. I mean, that's the great thing about learning all of these names is that come draft day, you're not thinking, who's that guy? But all the way into day 3, you'll be thinking, that's interesting.
So, I know this guy. Yeah. Okay. What about that one?
I like this bloke and no one's picked him up.
Same.
Obviously, teams don't have no idea what they're doing because I liked him.
Yep. Or Hakeem Butler. Hakeem Butler drops and drops. And
there's something we have to do, Matt. We probably have to get on before and talk about we've made a few
the
blunders.
guys that didn't work out.
Yeah.
The King Butler's a good one. If you're on Twitter, I get reminded of that.
I get reminded in all the fantasy teams that I've got and all the guys I play against remind me all the time.
I either get the folks who are still holding out hope because they just believe in that it may happen.
Yeah.
And it could. We'll see, but most of the time it's like somebody will compliment me on something. Somebody go, well, what about Hakeem Butler? I'm like, I missed on him most likely. So there you go.
Yeah.
Won't be the last time.
No.
Wasn't the first time.
Of course.
How it goes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll let you go, but thank you so much. And bring on the draft. And cheers, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll let you get some, I'll soon get some sleep, but.
No, I appreciate it. It's just, I don't know. I can feel that I'm getting a little bit tired.
Yeah.
After all,
and AJ's really shit at wrapping shows up.
Matt, I am terrible, so we'll just end it. So
it's okay. But y'all, it's funny. I like hanging with you guys, and you're funny. It's so funny. I loved how you're like, you missed half of this list. That made me laugh. That was awesome. So. You got all your papers with you, and you're like, you got these 5 wrong. I'm like, this is great. I like being on shows like this.
I must confess, sometimes it's my pet hate when I hear you on a pod and the hosts will say, "Oh, we've got Matt Waldman. So Matt, tell us about Jamar Chase," and it's just straight to business, and it's kind of boring as well because it's just like, "Well, tell us about X," and,
The other day, I did a show and somebody asked me in advance for players, and then I had already talked about them enough, so I was like, can I make an audible and pick some different guys? And like, sure. I was like, good, because I've already talked about them 3 times, and I'm trying to I want to share all the podcasts that are on, and I try to spread the bar apart a little bit, but when I post 4 in a row, and if I'm talking about the same guys on all 4, what can I say positive about the podcast, about what we talked about, unless we do something different? Fortunately, it hasn't been that way this year too much. There's one of the better podcasts I was on too was this Bears centric podcast called the Tape Never Lies Network, the Keeping It 100 podcast, and that was some funny stuff. Now the podcast was 3 hours long. What they do, I was on it for about an hour and a half.
So it's like a Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. But it was fun, and those guys were funny. They were funny, and we had good conversations about quarterback play, and we talked a lot about quarterbacks in that particular one.
Yep.
But yeah, all in all,
nice.
Keep it different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Go. Wrap it up, AJ.
Yeah. All right.
We're gone. See you, Matt. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Till next time.
Alrighty.
And on
and
behalf
anytime, let me know.
Yeah,
lovely.
Thank you, Matt.
That's
really
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It might even be good to touch base.
Here we go.
After the draft.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be good.
Obviously,
some of the guys we spoke about.
Your schedule is going to be very busy after the draft as
Let
well.
me know.
And obviously
That's
after
okay.
the post-draft RSP has dropped, because prior to that you'll be pretty busy, I imagine. But it might be nice just to have a chat post-draft.
Yeah, and we can talk about how teams got it wrong, Matt.
That sounds good.
Yep.
And we might,
Nice.
and we could talk about a couple other positions too. Now that we know where they went.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, just don't do quarterbacks,
G might
Matt.
not like that. Yeah.
Don't do I have no idea about quarterbacks. Like, that's a position that's just...
Nor do GMs.
Yeah,
Generally.
nor do GMs.
Yeah. None of us do it. Stuff, but, there we go. But, yeah.
That'd be
All
great.
right. Well,
All right. Sounds good. All right. All the
you guys.
best, Matt. Give him a follow at Matt Waldman and check out the RSP. And yes, I'm terrible at wrapping up. So let's finish this. All right. Cheers, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you later.